that we're
so Linda and then
then give it a couple more minutes because it's still 2 minutes.
Just to let you know that we're now live on YouTube.
Great.
Yeah, we've got 2 minutes more.
Yeah. Aha. Right. It looks like everyone is here and it is 6:30 on the dot.
It's time.
Right. So let's make a start. Hi, I'm Verity Morricane and I'm chair of Standards Committee. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting. It's being held virtually and in accordance with the Council's rules for virtual meetings, which reflect the recently published government regulations. The meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will also be available to view after the meeting is finished. Everyone who sits on this committee is identified by their name on the screen, and I'll introduce officers by name before they address the committee. People are reminded that although the meeting is being held remotely, they're regarded as being present in a meeting of the council and should observe the normal rules of behaviour under the member code of conduct and not allow members of their household to distract them during the course of the meeting. Can members of the committee ensure that their mobile phones are now switched on, off or on silent? And actually, bear with me a second because I've just realised that I've left mine on. Right. Members of the committee will turn on, if you can turn on your video link during the meeting if possible. I'm aware that if you have a dodgy signal, it might not be possible. And keep your microphone muted unless you've been invited to speak. Members are reminded if they switch off the video link or move away from the camera, they'll be treated as leaving the meeting. If you could either, if you want to speak, either raise your hand physically or else use the hand raising thing on Zoom. The officers present will only switch their video link on during the item they're presenting or when they wish to be invited to speak by me. As chair, I will confirm the name of any visiting speaker at the appropriate time. We haven't actually got any. Could you just declare if you're leaving the meeting for any reason and just switch off the video link? Don't need to worry about voting. Hopefully we won't have any IT problems, but if people do lose their connection, if you can just rejoin as quickly as possible. And I'd like to welcome Amanda Orchard, who is newly appointed Independent Standards Assessor. Welcome, and hope you'll find it as interesting as I found it.
Thank you very much.
So we've got one apology for absence, which is Councillor Slapford. and everyone else is here, which is great. Any declarations of interest? No. Any urgent matters that need to be considered? No. Right, minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of July. Does anyone have any matters of accuracy that they want to raise? No. Right, in that case, move on to the social media guidance for councillors. Now, we talked about this, I believe, at the last meeting and suggested some tweaks and amendments, which I see have been put in. Has everyone looked at it, and has anyone got any comments or suggestions? Oh, Amanda, I can see your hand raised.
Okay, so obviously I'm coming at this with completely fresh eyes because I hadn't seen this document before the end of last week. But I mentioned a few things actually with my induction with Fiona earlier on today, which you may or may not wish to consider. And I raise these on the basis that I fulfil the role of an IP in several other local authorities. And I raise these based on the fact of experiences that they and I have gone through in terms of social media. So I've kind of got 4 different points. Some may be relevant, some may be not. My first point is about, there are some rules about settings and privacy settings, which are really, really good. As part of that, they also talk about the private arena of social media. My point is, social media is not private. Even if you post in a relatively closed forum of which membership is required to gain access, there is nothing to stop anybody screenshotting that and then posting it elsewhere. So my first point was, I'm not sure if it's a point that needs to be made, and it may well not be, but just to remind people that anything that is posted up could appear at any time in any location. There's no such thing as privacy on social media. The two things don't go together. My second point was about the use of the counsellor title. Again, there's some talk about people when they are using it, social media, in their private capacity and when they're using it in their counsellor capacity, and encouraging people to potentially have two, which is great. But there's just a thought process that says if you put the name or the abbreviation counsellor before your name, it immediately identifies you as a counsellor, and it's harder to certainly then go on to say that you were commenting, let's say, on something in a private capacity if you've put that in front of you. It's not impossible, but it just makes the distinction harder. My third point was, I don't think this is particularly relevant talking to Fiona, but there's about what goes on in meetings. There's nothing in there to say that you can't post up in a meeting. I'm not sure it's particularly relevant. I don't think many of your members do it, but some people do have a policy that you cannot post up whilst you're in a meeting because it does take your attention away from listening, just like what you said at the beginning, Verity, about distractions. If you're writing a social media post, you're potentially not listening to what's going on in the room, something you may or may not want to consider. And the fourth point is to be really careful on posting information in a private capacity or a personal capacity if that information you've gained as a result of being a counsellor.
Yes.
You would have a hard task defending your position from a personal perspective if you could only have gained that information as a result of being a counsellor. All of those points are as a result of dealing with several social media queries over the last 3 years, and just some kind of thoughts to maybe think about. They may not be relevant for the authority, but I'd rather say it now whilst you're considering it rather than later down the line. That's me done.
Excellent. I mean, certainly the thing about nothing is private on the internet. One of my other roles is sitting on an ethics panel for Thames Valley Police, and that certainly has come up and has resulted in police officers facing disciplinary action. Yeah. So what do other people think about it? Has anyone else got any thoughts? Oh, Camilla?
I mean, my reading of it, I thought it was helpful because I thought there were lots of very useful examples throughout. But the question I had was, I wondered what the implications of this are in regard to induction for counsellors.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I just wondered what the implications were, because this is all very clear, I think. There are lots of examples,
Yeah.
but it's about actually understanding what it means for you whenever you are using social media.
Yeah.
That made me wonder about the induction that counsellors might have that might help to cement what's in here.
Yeah. That's a good point. And also about possibly refresher training, because things are changing and evolving so quickly. If I can sort of go back to Amanda's points, do you think there's merit in trying to add some of them in, and how much complication will it give to the process of agreeing the guidance?
Would you like me just to
Yeah,
respond?
please. Yeah.
So yes, thank you, Amanda. Really helpful points. I'm certainly, in relation to the first one, which was about privacy settings and everything not being private, I certainly think I could add a sentence there just to re-emphasize that point. I think all of the other points, yes, the use of the term counsellor, if you've got that in your title on your whatever social media using, then it's a factor to take into account, and it would, the weight would lean towards it being in the capacity of a counsellor, possibly not necessarily. It might be fine, but it would lean that way. The bit about posting in meetings, I haven't really seen much of it happening at this council. I've been in other councils where it does happen quite a lot. I don't think it's right to, well, personally, I wouldn't think it was appropriate for me to tell, or for the council to tell people they can't use their social media in a meeting, but that councillors might feel otherwise. But as long as it's done appropriately, and you can say you've been taking into account of what's been going on in the meeting, so you can make your decisions properly, then I don't have a real problem with it, so long as it's not inappropriate. And again, yes, the point about making sure you're not using information which you've gained as a counsellor that's perfectly, real good comment. As far as what Camilla was saying, I think once we've got this through, we will be doing some, and we're trying to get the new code of conduct through as well, so it could package it together in new training. Certainly on induction it would be covered. We do code of conduct training at the beginning of each municipal year, so we can add this certainly to that programme.
Great. Oh, Linda?
Good evening all. I think Amanda's points are very valid, and I also agree with Camilla's. I particularly like some of the scenarios in there, and I think wondering if it would be helpful to try and elaborate what some of the consequences of some of that might be, so that it brings it to reason. And the other point I was going to make was, can this also somewhere say that it also applies to parish councillors? And is parish councillors also going to get the same training? Because I think there are those issues out in the wider field as well.
Yeah, I think we discussed it when I went to the APTC meeting about expanding the training to the parish and town councils as well, because we can do a package that it's much easier if it's remote as well, isn't it? We can get to a lot more people. So certainly we'll expand that going forward. Yeah.
I think so, but I also like to say that we need to keep a record of who actually does it.
Attend.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, because otherwise people can just say, oh, I've done that, and not taken any notice, sort of thing. You know, training at work, you have to sit a small test at the end of it, which is quite valuable because it goes back to whoever to make sure that you've actually done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying we need that
to
big
set
stick,
an exam.
but,
I was going to say.
well, we don't necessarily need that big stick, but I think possibly we need to make sure that we know who has been.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it was Councillor McKay next.
No, I was just going to say, I can't imagine personally posting on social media in a meeting. It just doesn't square with the way I am, but I wouldn't like to see us prevent others who feel they can give proper attention to the meeting and at the same time interact in some other way.
Excellent. And then I believe, Dan, you were next?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and welcome, Amanda Orchard. It's really great to see you. You gave a very good brief of what our updated draft is going to be on the social media guidance, as well as for councillors and on the social media guidance, which is the appendix 2, the clean version. So we are where we are, and we have to abide by the updated draft, and then also we have to approve it, Chairman. And that is for recommendation, more or less, that is going to be. And Fiona also really said what there is in that briefly. So we all have read it. I have read it. I hope everybody else have. And I hope that we can move forward and really approve that updated draft guidance of 1 and 2. And then we can refer it to the Constitutional Working Party for recommendation to Council for approval. So we have to really see as to what the other members think, but I think we have to do that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Amanda has suggested a few tweaks and additions. So, Fiona, if you can give me a bit of guidance as to if we're going to ask for some additional bits to be slotted in, we can't actually approve it today, can we?
I think you could approve it. So what I could do is just circulate the updated version to you all outside of the meeting, and then it doesn't hold me back in trying to progress it.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that case, subject to the tweaks suggested by Amanda to strengthen a few things, are we all happy to approve it?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, and then can refer it to the Constitutional Committee. Great. Yeah, it's good to see it happening. Right. Then, moving on, we have got the draft Code of Conduct for Councillors. Now, this is the updated version that we did discuss, I believe, at the last meeting. We actually only have to note this. We don't have to approve it.
I think you'd already recommended it going forward, Chair. So it was just to provide an update that I'd done some engagement with the parish association, town Association,
Yeah.
and sent out the draft code in a more Basingstoke format rather than just the LGA version. So I was just updating the committee on that.
Great.
And just to say, we've had about 10 responses now from parish town councils saying they're willing to adopt it, and we'll keep chasing those other responses on that.
Yeah. So that's roughly a third, quarter?
I think so.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Right. So unless anyone's got any comments.
Councillor Slimming's got a phone.
Yes.
A hand up.
I know that you made a representation to the Basingstoke and District Town Parish Council Association, which just steps off the trunk, doesn't it? And what sort of response did you get at the meeting? And whether, I mean, obviously we've only had formal responses from about 10 parishes, but were there other parishes there? And did you feel that there was any resistance to this?
No, thank you. No, I didn't get the sense there was any resistance at all. I think more a case of just get on with it. And what are we faffing about that? More really, but they did want it to go out to all the clerks individually, just so they could do their, the individual consultation with their own parishes. So it was positive response.
Right.
Well, can I say that's good, because when we first introduced this, we had all sorts of reasons, people resigned and everything. So it's good to see that now it's sort of just part of the woodwork and people are quite happy with it. And as you know, my council's already adopted the board.
Right.
I was asked whether or not we should adopt the Basingstoke one. I said, well, can't see any reason why not. Then we're consistent to explain the reason why. It would be much better if all the parishes adopted the same version, and then we never have any anomalies when we can do some disputes. So that's good. And I'm pleased. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to the meeting. I was trying to go, but I couldn't go. I had a lecture. Thank you for that.
Excellent. Right. So, Camilla?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
You are muted, Camilla.
You're muted.
Sorry, it froze just then. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My point is linked to the point I raised earlier. Looking at 3.6 in the Code of Conduct, where it talks about when the new code is adopted, it'll be accompanied by a training programme. I just wondered, is the training programme the training on the Code of Conduct, is it mandatory or is it optional for new councillors?
Well, I'd like it to be mandatory, but it not everybody attends it, I should say.
That's what I assumed, and the reason for my question is picking up on what you were saying earlier, Linda, when you said about keeping a record. And I just wanted to know, for my own sort of peace of mind, I assumed that one would hope that councillors would take advantage of it, but it just seems to me to be so important. I wondered, do we have a record of how many councillors attend or have attended in the past? No.
Well, sorry, I should just say that the Democratic Services team do have a record of everybody that's attended, certainly the last year's training. My intention would also to put this into an e-learning package as well, so that there's a different way for people to access it. I know some councils have done videos, just so that people can access it when it's convenient to them, rather than having to come to a meeting necessarily. I do think there's some merit in having workshop type meetings as well, so you can talk through scenarios. But if people can't attend, it's at least have some sort of training, even if it's in an e-learning model.
Thank you,
Linda.
Sorry.
I believe that John, you were first.
Yeah. Sorry, John.
I was just going to say, in my experience in another environment, what would be mandatory is to acknowledge receipt of the code. So in other words, it's not necessarily mandatory to attend the training or whatever, but you do have to acknowledge receipt of it. And I think something as important as a code of conduct warrants that. That would be my suggestion.
So I think on declaration of office, you have to say that you've read the code of conduct when you sign that.
Great, then, Linda.
My comment really was to sort of Fiona saying about the e-package, etc. I think this definitely needs to go out to parish councils as well. And that, I think, would be the ideal way to do it. And again, you can keep a record of which councillors have actually gone on and done it. Because we know from experience, a lot of the complaints coming in are from parishes.
Yeah.
And, you know, that would, well, you never know, it might actually stop some of them coming in. So if they actually have read it and they've done some kind of e-learning test, there's really not so much excuse.
Yeah. And of course,
and again, mandatory. I don't see why it can't be mandatory. At the end of the day, they've all got to behave like it.
And of course, the other advantage of an e-learning package is that people can redo it and refresh their knowledge. Yeah. Right. Have I missed anyone else who wants to make a comment? Great. In that case, I think we've noted it. And hopefully it will get rolled out. So next we have the complaints log.
Do you like me just to say a few words?
Yeah, please.
So as most people know, this just provides an update on the complaints ongoing or concluded within this municipal year. At the time the report was written, we had 2 ongoing ones, and actually we hadn't had any new complaints in since the last committee meeting in July. Unfortunately, in the last week since the report went out, we've had 3 new complaints in, which are 3 parish, town and town council complaints. So it's got a bit busier.
Joe.
At the last meeting, and it was minuted, we did ask that the report could say whether they were parish or borough council complaints. And I noted in this one they weren't included, although sometimes obviously there's a reference to the parish, so you can know that. But it would be useful for us to identify. Last time we heard that there were quite a lot of parish ones, and it is always useful to know exactly which ones are which. So that would be useful to have if we could do that, because we've agreed the minutes as well. So that's good. And these 3 new ones, are they all the same councils that we've had before? No, they're totally new.
Yes, I think they are. Yes, newish. Yes,
okay.
3 different councils. Yeah.
Right.
Apologies for missing the parishes off. I hadn't picked that up. I'm sorry about that. I should say on the log that all of them bar 1 are parish complaints.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Any other comments? Nope. In which case we can move on to our review of the work programme. Have people got any ideas of other things that they think we should be discussing at future meetings? I mean, obviously we've been thrashing out the code of conduct and the social media guidance, and hopefully they are now moving on to the
Councillor Slimin had her hand up.
Obviously, we've now got to get the code of conduct approved through council.
Yeah.
And once it is approved, and then we can move on to doing the training programme.
Yeah.
It might be quite useful for us to see if as an e-learning package for us to be able to review it and have a look at it, and we might be able to sort of add some bits and pieces. I'd like to think it was not as totally dry as many of the e-learning packages that I've had to do. Maybe there might be some things that might be a little more not light-hearted in the sense of you know, not being serious enough, but obviously something that might attract people and give them some food for thought. But I just thought it might be useful. Do we think we're going to be ready by March for training? Because there'll be a new lot of councillors coming in possibly in May.
It would be a good timing for it, wouldn't it? So yes, I think I should. I should be okay by then. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems a really good idea. Yep, to look at the training. Any other things that you think you should put on to March? Amanda, you're looking thoughtful. Is there anything that you think, from your experience of other councils, that you're surprised you haven't seen here?
Nothing's immediately springing to mind. I'm just thinking about back to the e-package and bringing it to life. I mean, it depends on how much work you want to put into it, but you could include some different scenarios in there and kind of make it a multiple choice just to bring it alive a little bit. So try and provide some real life situations and for people to reflect on it. I might be able to help you with some of those real life situations, as I've encountered quite a lot of them. But I'm just thinking to your point, Joe, about, you know, it's not the sexiest of subjects, and you want to get people engaged with it. So whilst you probably shouldn't inject huge amounts of humour into it, you could try and bring it alive in some different kind of scenarios and such to get people thinking about it. That was what I was looking pensive at, Verity. I was just trying to think, is there something? But I'm conscious I don't want to cause Fiona massive amounts of work here, but I'm just trying to think of how to bring it to life a little bit and get people doing it. The other thing you could do, although you can't make things mandatory, I have had situations before where you've published on the website people that have done certain things to encourage people to step forward and do it. It's worked in some areas, not in others. Just something to kind of think about, that sort of put that roll call out there, because if it's public facing, particularly with elections coming up as well, people normally want to step forward and be involved in stuff. So again, just something that you could mull over. Those are my couple of thoughts on that.
It's not about shaming people for not doing it, but praising the people who back. Yes. Good idea.
Think about that, but definitely on the e-package, doing some different scenario situations. I mean, you could take it further. You could do little videos and things like that, but you probably haven't got the time, the resource, the energy, the budget, or the will to live. But just some things about trying to bring a very dry subject to life and get people engaged in it, which ultimately is what you want. And it sounds to me like you want to do it quite widely spread, including the parishes. Sounds very important to me to do the parishes based on what you just said on the complaints record. So just my thoughts. Excellent.
Great. Right. And perhaps if people can sort of think, and if there's anything that anyone thinks we should have as an item, March or subsequent meetings, suggest it. Great. I mean, we have discussed, Linda, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it could be that Fiona might want to send trial packages out to various people. See what they think when she's got it. And then obviously that can develop, and then send out a final kind of rollout to all of us, just to see how we think it's going to go down. But I think talking about the scenarios and trying to make people think about it is actually quite vital.
Yeah.
And it's the consequences of sometimes that they need to be made aware of.
Yeah.
Some of the things they say or do.
Yeah. Yes.
And whether or not you can do what they do on many courses, which is a little quiz at the end.
Yes.
Yes,
Test, and you get a certificate, you know, that you've passed at 93% or whatever, because it's on GDPR one, sorry. Yeah, and that's got scenarios. And okay, it's a subject that is quite dry, but it can become reasonably interesting if you see the different scenarios and sometimes get the wrong one because, you know, but it does make you think, well, why did I get that wrong? So again, you know, they could have a certificate which you know, they might want to hold on to.
But also, I think having a pass mark is actually quite a valuable tool because they're not going to get it unless they've actually done it and read it properly.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Yeah.
They actually get the answers right. So it's actually quite a good way of finding out that people have actually done it and understood.
Leslie,
You're on mute.
you're on mute.
Might have frozen. I'm not sure.
I think I'm okay now.
Leslie,
I found it. I just as a reflection rather than a comment, is that as a result of sending out the code of conduct work, you had 10 replies out of 43 parish councillors, I think. If we look at the borough councillors, in lots of cases, about 50 to 60% of the councillors have training. I think we need to be careful we don't go over the top in saying that people have to have this e-training and other things, because it was pointed out earlier, everyone who's a borough councillor or a parish councillor actually states and signs that they're aware of the current code of conduct and they abide by it. So I think that, as Joe referred to, in the last code of conduct, although this one is not too materially different, there were about 15% of all parish councillors resigned mainly because of declaring their interests in the pecuniary interests and property interests and so on. So I think we have to be, it's very well for us to sit around a table or sit around a Zoom meeting and say that this has got to happen, that's got to happen, when in fact, from past experience, it's not going to work too well. So I'd be very loath to start making things essential for parish council, because there is a difference in that borough councils get paid, all parish councillors are voluntary.
Yeah, it's a good point. But I think it's about getting the balance between hopefully helping councillors, and it's a very good point that you made, that obviously parish councillors are doing it, what's often a lot of work for no financial reward, but it's about trying to get the message across that it's about helping them to avoid inadvertently getting things wrong.
I entirely agree with the comment, but it's reality really that whether it can't be mandatory for borough councils, so it's got to be voluntary for parish councils, and there's 43, I think there's about 500 parish councillors in the borough area. So it is. I think we haven't got to be too carried away with saying everyone's got to do this training, because I think even in the case of Councillor Agnew, we she didn't actually approve the code of conduct on the last occasion.
Hey. Yeah.
I agree with you there. It's I believe Sherburn St John didn't approve it at all, which is something that I will be looking at because I don't see why we shouldn't. So I shall beat the rest of them over the head and say that yes, we should be, because it does obviously make life a lot more simple. I'll have a chat with Verity and Fiona at the end of this because I just want to check who's actually had it. I haven't seen it, although I have seen it under the auspices of Standards Committee. So I just want to check that it is actually around. But no, I agree. A lot of the parish councils are voluntary, but at the same time, they need to be aware of some of the consequences of what happens. And as we know, the vast majority of complaints are with parish councils.
And from a minority of parish councils.
Yeah.
One other thing we could think about was whether or not the learning package, if we could persuade the clerks to deliver it to a parish meeting, a separate meeting where they just go do it together, maybe, rather than individually, if that is a difficulty. But then, they could get a score for the parish, because I think it's going to be led by the parish clerks. And as a council, I better be a bit wary about what I say about parish clerks. There are obviously different types of parish clerks. Some have more hours than others, and many of them are only part-time. So obviously, again, there's the way of communication out is different in lots of different councils. So I think obviously we just need to be aware. But the Basingstoke District Town and Parish Council Association have a lot of representation there, and most of the councils, I think, actually do have a councillor who goes to it. So I think through that medium as well, we can persuade people that it would be a good thing for them to review the new code, and obviously the social media aspect as well, which I think a lot of councillors are quite worried about, including people in the parishes. And that is something that is new to them. So I think that is something that might be a little bit of a trigger to say to people, you really ought to have a look at this again and look at the new guidance that's been given, which is there to help you stop you getting any pitfalls and get into hot water.
Great. I think, John, you had your hand up next, and then Linda.
Yeah, just going back to the subject of e-learning, given that we're adopting a standard code of conduct from the LGA, I wonder if the LGA have already produced some training. It'd be worth asking just to see if there's something that can be either used or adapted.
Yeah, Fiona, are you aware?
I don't think they have yet, but I'll get in touch with them because it'd be useful. They can then it'd save a lot of time and energy, wouldn't it, if they did something nationally?
Yeah. And Linda.
I'm picking up on Joe's point about the parish clerks. That I think there needs to be two options, because not all parish clerks will feel able to possibly deliver that as a training package. I'm picking that up. And Leslie's point as well about, so maybe the clerks delivering it and the e-learning should be an optional way for the two parish councils to do it. They can then choose which way they do it themselves.
Right. So I think this is going to be something that's actually going to the whole issue of the training programme and rolling it out is definitely something we'll need to come back to in March. Yeah. Great. Really good discussion. Anyone else with any points they'd like to make on it? Or any other things that have crossed anyone's head that we should be discussing in the future meetings? Right. In that case, exclusion of press and public and any confidential or exempt items, which as far as I'm aware, there aren't any. Right. No. Right. It's been really good discussion. on the code of conduct and social media guidance and ideas for training programme going forward. Any other business from anyone? Right. In which case, this meeting is closed.